Okay, everyone, so welcome back again, and we will carry on, surprise, surprise, with the suttas, and we have kind of gone through what is, in many ways, the main aspect of how to meditate according to the Buddha, Anapanasati, and now what we're going to focus on is more like the things around that. How to make this work, how to make this process actually happen. And a large part of that is about how to prepare yourself, how to do other practices that support the anapanasati. We're going to look at this in quite a bit of detail, because for many people, even though the theory is kind of there, it often doesn't really happen quite that way. And so we need to discover the causes, the reason why it doesn't happen. And what we can do to put in place the cause and conditions to make this process actually come about. So before we get into all of those details about the creating the cause and conditions, I want to look at the sutta that I very often teach on retreats, and it is about the conditionality of this process, how the meditation actually works. And it is, to my mind, a very interesting kind of sutta, and it sort of just really emphasizes again some of the things that I've been talking about so far, the idea of the causality, the automaticality, or whatever the right word is, of the process we call meditation. So this is the Cetana Karaniya Sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Anguttara Nikaya 10s. And so I will just read it out, and then we will discuss the details a little bit. So again, Bhante Sudato's translation. This is what you find on the website sutracentral.net, and this is how it goes. Mendicants, an ethical person who has fulfilled ethical conduct needs not make a wish. May I have no regrets. It is natural that an ethical person has no regrets. When you have no regrets, you need not make a wish. May I feel joy. Pamoja. It is only natural that joy springs up when you have no regrets. When you feel joy, you need not make a wish. May I experience rapture. It is only natural that rapture arises when you are joyful. This is on page 4 in the thing here. When your mind is full of rapture, you need not make a wish. May my body become tranquil. It is natural that the body becomes tranquil when you have a mind full of rapture. When your body is tranquil, you need not make a wish. May I feel bliss. It is natural to feel bliss when your body is tranquil. When you feel bliss, you need not make a wish. May my mind be stilled. It is only natural for the mind to be stilled when you feel bliss. When your mind is stilled, you need not make a wish. May I truly know and see. It is natural to truly know and see when your mind is stilled. When you truly know and see, you need not make a wish. May I become disillusioned, or disillusioned, or disillusioned and dispassionate. It is only natural to be disillusioned and dispassionate when you truly know and see. When you are disillusioned and dispassionate, you need not make the wish. May I realize knowledge and vision of freedom. It is only natural to realize the knowledge and vision of freedom when you are disillusioned and dispassionate. So this is the sutta, very repetitive, but that helps us to focus on the critical aspects here. And very interesting, it is just another way of thinking about the Buddhist path, in a sense from the beginning all the way to the end. The end here is the knowledge and vision of liberation, Vimutti Jnana Dasana. And the beginning, of course, here is Sila. And it takes you through all the development, the cultivation of the mind that happens as a consequence of this path. From Sila to liberation. And that kind of makes it look not so difficult, right? This natural progression from Sila all the way to awakening at the very end. You can see how the process kind of works here. And this is kind of the beauty, if you like, of this particular sutta, showing you this conditionality, how it actually comes out. So there's a number of things about this particular sutta that is especially interesting here. And one of the first things that you will notice when you look at the qualities that are talked about here, in a sense what you are seeing here is the psychological qualities that develop as you practice meditation. This is like the first-person perspective of meditation. This is how it feels to you when the meditation goes in the right way. So it is a first-person perception of meditation. If you like, it is a psychology of meditation, if you want to put it that way. And once you understand that this is the psychology of meditation, it starts to look very attractive. Because that psychology is all about good things. It is all about joy, about happiness, about rapture. It is all about samadhi, it is about tranquility, it is about not having any regrets. And ultimately, it is about freedom itself. Every single quality on this particular path is really attractive and really motivates you to do this practice in the right way because of its, these are the things that everyone basically wants. And to me, when I read these kind of suttas, and there's a number of suttas like this, and there's a number of ways this is expressed in the suttas. Another way that this is expressed is through the bojjhangas. The bojjhangas are basically just an alternative to this particular sequence. This sequence here, I usually call it dependent liberation, because it shows how liberation comes about depending on cause and conditions. The satta sambojjhanga, the 7 factors of awakening, are also the process of how liberation happens. Starting with sati, ending with upekkha, and they are the causes for liberation. And when you put this sequence here, you put it next to the 7 factors of awakening, you can see that there is a very clear overlap between the two. It is basically the same sequence, but with slightly different factors to it. A slightly different view of the same kind of sequence. And this is one of the kind of the remarkable things about the way the Buddha teaches the Dhamma. Is very often he teaches the Dhamma is basically the same. The path is only one path really, but you can illuminate the path from many different angles. And so here one angle is the dependent liberation sequence, another angle is the 7 factors of awakening, and another angle again is the Anapanasati Sutta. So if you take the Anapanasati Sutta and you put it next to these factors here, again you see a large degree of overlap between the two. And this is one of the reasons I say that the factors of the Anapanasati Sutta, they follow roughly the same meaning as you see here, because the two sequences are very much in sync with each other. And now you can start to understand why this sutta is really important, right? We're talking about the 7 factors of awakening. These are some of the most important things that you find in the suttas. This is part of the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas. The 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, the Buddha talks about this in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and he says, these are the things I discovered. This is the teaching of the Buddha. It can be summarized in the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas. 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, the 37 aids to awakening. This is what the Dhamma is about, and the 7 factors of awakening are part of that. It's a core part of the teaching of the Buddha. Then you have the Anapanasati Sutta, which also we have seen before is very core part of the Buddha's teachings. Then we now have the dependent liberation sequence, and this particular sequence, it occurs in various forms in many, many places in the suttas. It is a standard way of expressing how liberation happens. And so you can see the exact same thing are talked about as a critical importance in many places in the suttas, and so you know that this is a core teaching of the Buddha as a consequence. And that core teaching is all about happiness, joy, tranquility, all of these good qualities. What is not to like, as they say? Yeah, it's just really, really kind of attractive. It draws you to the Dhamma when you hear these kind of things. And so I think one of the problems that we often have in Buddhism, one of the things that we really need to focus on, we need to sell the Buddhist teachings in the right way. Especially as monastics, we are basically salespeople, right? We are salesmen and saleswomen because we are, in many ways, we are the leaders of Buddhism, and our job is to give the teaching of the Buddha and give them in a good way, give them in such a way that people get inspired by these teachings. This is kind of our job. And in my experience with the Dhamma, there's too many teachers who focus on suffering, focus on the problem, and people say, Buddhism is all very pessimistic and about suffering, don't want to have anything to do with it, I would rather go to Christianity, all you have to do is pray to God and everything else is kind of secondary. Christianity much easier, Buddhism, too much problems, too much dukkha, too much all kind of things. And so we have to be able to sell the Buddhist teachings, we have to give the best we can from the Buddhist teaching. And this kind of sequence you see here is super duper attractive. This is the psychology of what happens to you when you practice the path in the right way. And it's really, to me, there is no religion in the world that gives these kind of teachings. You don't find it anywhere else. This is really revolutionary. And this is how the Buddha gives the Dhamma to the world. So we need to focus, I think, more on the positive. And a very important reason for that is because when we discuss the Dhamma from a negative point of view in terms of suffering and the cause of suffering, most people can't relate to that. It's just too profound. If you say to an ordinary person on the street that sabbe sankhara dukkha, they say, you're crazy. What do you mean sabbe sankhara dukkha? I just go to the coffee shop and have a cup of coffee and I feel sukha. So how can sabbe sankhara be dukkha? Go away, I will believe in Christianity instead. So we have to be very careful. People are not ready for some of these profound teachings. And so we need to know the right place and the right time to give these teachings. And then we are not shortchanging the Buddha. Shortchanging the Buddha means teaching the wrong thing at the wrong time. So be very sensitive to the audience. What is appropriate for the audience to understand. Then we can give the best of these teachings. And this, to me, is a very attractive way of presenting the Dhamma. There's lots and lots about happiness in the suttas, and that is much easier for people to relate to. So this is the first thing about this particular sutta, which I find very fascinating. And the second thing that is really interesting about this, and it fits very well with the way that my teacher, Ajahn Brahm, always taught the suttas, and this is the idea that it is automatic. It is a natural cause and effect sequence. Bhante Sujato says here, he calls it is only natural. It's not actually a very good translation, in my opinion. Don't tell Ajahn Sujato I said that. Because I'm not sure what, no, he will be fine with that. But I don't think it is an ideal translation. What it really means is that it is accordance to nature, that one thing leads to the next one. It is only natural. It's a bit wishy-washy, to be honest with you. And usually he doesn't mince his words, but in this case he has minced his words too much. So it means it is a natural thing that one thing arises from the previous one. So that is my first criticism of Bhante Sujato. My second criticism, so I'm not going to hold back, you see. So this is now I'm really going to do this properly. Once you criticize, you might as well go for it. That's what I reckon. So the second one, he says that you need not make a wish. But actually the Pali doesn't say, there's nothing about need in the Pali. The Pali says that this is not to be done through intention. The Pali word is chaitana. Chaitana means intention or will. This cannot be done by intention. That is what the Pali says. That is very different from saying you need not make a wish. One thing is a very strong statement, the other one is kind of weak and wishy-washy again. So the point is that this process does not happen by intention. It happens through cause and effect. And what you have to do is put the cause and conditions into place. And once they are in place, this sequence will happen whether you want to or not. This is a natural sequence. Happens according to nature. That is a very, very powerful statement. Because what it means is that when you do meditation, you should just sit back and you should just observe the process happening to you rather than trying to make the process happen. And if the process does not happen, it is not because you are not doing enough. The reason it is not happening is because the initial cause and conditions are not powerful enough to make the process happen. So this is very, very interesting, and this is what Ajahn Brahm has always been telling me. I didn't believe in the beginning. I said, well, maybe for you, but not for me. It's a kind of, this is how many people think when we start out in meditation. But after a while, I realized actually he's right about this. Once the cause and conditions are in place, you sit back and you observe, and mindfulness does the job. Mindfulness ensures that the mind develops according to this particular sequence that we find in this sutta. So allow the process to happen. Don't try to make the process happen. I was telling some people in the interview the other day, this is a nice simile for understanding how this works. And this is the simile of a small child and their mother, or maybe the father or the mother. Let's say the mother. And the mother wants to teach the child about how plants grow, right? So the mother gives a little seed to the little child. The child is maybe only 4 years old or something, a very small child. And it says to the child, okay, take this seed, plant it, and you will see how the plants grow. So put the seed into the ground, not too deep, not too shallow, just a little bit under the earth, and then you water a little bit every day, and then eventually you will see the plant coming out. So the child is very happy. It follows the instructions from the mother. It goes watering every day, not too much water, not too little water, and eventually the little seed starts to sprout, and the plant starts coming through the ground. And the child is really excited. You know what little children are like. They get really excited. Look, mommy, the plant is kind of coming out. And then the mother says, okay, now you just have to be patient. That is the last thing you should say to a child, right? Be patient. 4-year-old child, patience, very difficult. Anyway, the mother makes her first mistake. He says, be patient, keep on watering, and the plant will keep on growing. But of course, the child is not very patient. So the child decides, I will help nature to make nature progress faster. So the little child says, okay, well, I will help your plant to grow faster. So he grabs hold of the plant, pulls the plant, grow faster, pulls, snap, and the plant breaks. And it destroys nature rather than making nature go faster. And this is like the same thing with meditation. If you try to go against nature, if you try to make nature happen, actually you get in the way of nature instead. And instead of the thing kind of coming out beautifully, the meditation snaps and it doesn't work anymore. So Chaitana is actually counterproductive because Chaitana gets in the way of nature happening. And that's why it doesn't really work in this way. So all of this, what does it mean? Well, it means that if your meditation only goes so far and then you get to a plateau and it doesn't go any further, what you have to do is you have to go back to the very beginning of the sequence. And the very beginning of the sequence will tell you what it is that you have to do to make this whole process happen. What does the beginning of the sequence say? It says sila. So if the process is not working properly, it means your sila is not powerful enough yet. That's really what it means. So it is the sila that you have to work on. And then as you work on that sila, as you work on your morality, as you become more kind, as you have more metta, as you have more compassion for the world, as you develop all of these things, you will notice that it affects your meditation. And next year you meditate, next time you go on a retreat, you go deeper. You are more mindful. The samadhi becomes more established. Everything changes because, not because you are trying harder, not because you are mindful in daily life, mindfulness in daily life is good, but only good if it promotes sila, because sila is the foundation for this path. So use the mindfulness in daily life to promote sila. And then, as your sila is empowered, the process works. But here it is very important to understand what is meant by sila in Buddhism. And sila is very broad. It is, first of all, of course, it's about keeping the 5 precepts. It's about not doing anything bad. But it is also, remember, a very important part of sila is about doing good actions. Literally giving gifts to others, either giving gifts like material gifts, or giving gifts through how you speak, or giving gifts through your actions, giving gifts just by how you think about other people. That is also a kind of gift. And as you do all of these positive actions, actually something starts to change inside of you. You start to feel good about yourself. And that good feeling about yourself, that becomes the source that makes meditation work. So the only way to really be able to make these things work is we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. Do we have an anger problem? How forgiving are we of other people? Do we have compassion for people when they make mistakes? Or do we get upset with them? All of these kind of things, this is the ground where we have to make the difference. And if we can always be compassionate, always be kind, then guaranteed this path is going to work really well. And this is why we will come back to these things later on, talk more about the idea of metta in daily life and also as a way of thinking about the world. We'll come back to this later on because it is such an important part of this whole process. So sila is really where it is at. But there is also another aspect of sila that sometimes you don't talk about. And you will know that in the suttas, one of the ways that the Buddha talks about sila is the dasa kusala kammapata. The 10 ways of wholesome actions or good actions. Dasa kusala kammapata. And one part of the dasa kusala kammapata is basically right view, or what is called there the undistorted view. Aviparita dasana, I think it is called, something like that. And so the undistorted view is also an aspect of this. And so a very important part of sila as well, and also to support meditation, to support the sila itself, is the idea of right view. If you think about the world in the right way, that will actually improve your sila. What is that right way? Well, very briefly, I'll talk more about this later on, I think, see what happens. But very briefly, that right view is the urgency of sila. How it really matters, how now is the only opportunity. What can I do now, in this very moment, to be more kind, to have less of a fault-finding mind, to have more metta, whatever it might be, in this moment. Understanding the urgency of this, understanding the unreliability of existence, understanding how you never know when you're going to die, how you never know when society will no longer sustain or be able to support the monastic life. We are very fortunate right now because monasticism is still very well supported around the world, in Australia, here in Sri Lanka. But how long will those conditions last? If there is a war, it becomes very difficult to be a monastic. We don't know. Now is the time to practice. The urgency is really severe. Now is the time. And very often we don't understand the importance of that urgency. That is the wrong view that we have. We don't understand the anicca, the reality of impermanence and unreliability. So you need to reflect on this all the time. And once you reflect like that, and you come to this point, it becomes like crossing the road. You know that crossing the road is dangerous, so you look left and right. But now you know that your speech is actually even more dangerous than crossing the road. Get it wrong, you are dragging yourself down, letting yourself down, heading in the wrong direction, not understanding the urgency with this. So you never allow yourself to say the wrong thing, to act in the wrong way, to think the wrong thought. You always encourage yourself to have more compassion, more understanding, more metta for the people around you. This is what is meant by right view. Or this is an important part, I should say, of right view. And a lot of this, when we talk about right view, very often we talk about the idea of rebirth, we talk about karma, and of course that is foundational right view. If you don't believe in rebirth, if you think rebirth is wrong, as far as I'm concerned, you're not a Buddhist. Because you're not taking refuge in the Buddha if you don't think rebirth. There's no such thing as rebirth. So rebirth is fundamental. But it is not enough just to believe in rebirth. You have to ask about the consequences of rebirth. And these are some of the consequences. The sense of urgency, because the dangers of samsara are so great and the uncertainty is so great. So really taking this on board, what does it mean for me? How can I use this to motivate myself? How can I make this emotional? We want to feel these things, right? If you feel kind of, wow, this is scary, that becomes a motivating factor to actually make you act in the right way. You don't want to be so scared that you become paralyzed. That's not really the idea. But you want to understand that there is a danger here. Then the motivation comes. Why? Because we are driven by emotions. We're not driven by intellectual ideas. So it's very important to feel these kind of things. Then they become powerful. So this is the idea of sila at the very beginning of the path. So this is where so much of the work has to be done. And so I would recommend all of you, whether you are lay upasakas, or whether you are monastics, to consider this really, really carefully. And this is very often where the problem actually lies and why the meditation doesn't work properly. So this is then some of the interesting points you see here. Another very interesting point that you see in this sequence, which I'd like to just discuss very briefly, is that you will notice that the cause here, the thing that leads to truly knowing and seeing, truly knowing and seeing is yatha bhuta jnana dassana, knowledge and vision according to reality, if you like. What is the cause, according to the sutta, of seeing things according to reality? Lo and behold, it's samadhi. Samadhi is how you know and see things according to reality. And this is what you see throughout the suttas. It is always samadhi that is the cause for seeing things in the right way. It is never sati. Sati is never the cause for yatha bhuta jnana dassana. Sati is the cause for samadhi. Samadhi is the cause for seeing things according to reality. So when we talk about using sati in daily life to gain insight, maybe you can use it a little bit to develop your perceptions, to seeing things more clearly, but it will never have the profundity of seeing things fully as we're trying to do here. The main purpose of sati should always be to take the mind ultimately to samadhi. That is the main purpose. And some of that purpose will be fulfilled by small insights, remembering impermanence, seeing the impermanence around you, recollecting death, remembering to have metta for the people around you, having the karuna. These are the little things that we contemplate all the time. And then they will, of course, support that sati. And then when you sit down in a meditation, because you have used the sati to purify yourself, then the samadhi becomes attainable. But it is never sati that leads to seeing things according to reality. It is always samadhi in the suttas. Samadhi is the requisite for seeing things according to reality. What do we mean by samadhi? And what we mean by samadhi in the suttas, the one thing that is always samadhi in the suttas is the four jhanas. I once did a count. I counted how many times the jhana is mentioned in the four nikayas. The four nikayas, Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya. How many times is jhana mentioned? Over 1,000 times in the four nikayas. It's absolutely everywhere. To think that jhana is not important is just silly. It means you haven't really read the suttas. If you read the suttas in a kind of with a neutral eye, you will see it is everywhere. Then I looked at other kinds of samadhi like sunyata samadhi, animitta samadhi, apanahita samadhi. I looked at how many times they are spoken about in the suttas. It's like 10 times or something like that. 10 versus 1,000. It's like 1% of the time. And when you start to see this, then you realize that the samadhi of the Buddha, when the Buddha uses the word samadhi, usually what he means is the jhanas. Other samadhi is much, much less important in the suttas. So what does it mean in this case? Probably means the jhanas. Yeah, it is not given as 100% certain, but usually it will mean the jhanas. And if you want to have one sutta that tells you whether you need jhana or not to become a stream enterer, actually I think it's the wrong question to ask anyway. I don't think we should think like that. We should just practice the Noble Eightfold Path, and we should forget about these theoretical questions. But this sutta comes very close to saying that jhana is required, because samadhi usually means jhana, and yata buddha nanadasana, well, that is needed to become a stream enterer. Yeah? So this is very close to saying that. So this is a very important point in this sutta. Sati does not really give rise to deep insight. It can be a little bit helpful, but it does not give rise to the real insights. Samadhi is required for that, and the Buddha is very clear. And if you meet some enlightened person, some enlightened maybe monk or nun or whatever, who you think, wow, this person really have the act together, and they tell you that, it's enough to be mindful in daily life, then even if the person is enlightened, the word of the Buddha comes first. Yeah? Remember that, because you don't know exactly whether this person is enlightened. You don't know why they are saying this on this particular day. Maybe they feel that today they need to say this. The word of the Buddha should always come, number one. Number two, word of Ajahn Brahm, or whoever your teacher happens to be, right? Always number two. And Ajahn Brahm will be the first one to say that, and I really respect him for saying that. This is why, one of the reasons why I respect Ajahn Brahm so much. It is not about him. He will tell you the word of the Buddha is primary. So this is also one of the kind of powerful things that comes out of this particular sutta. So let us just go through these things that we see here, the various factors, and how each one leads to the next one. We have already seen this through the mindfulness of breathing, the anapanasati. So it is very similar to that, and you will see that very soon. But it's kind of useful to go through this anyway. So the first thing here is that if you have ethical conduct, you will have no regrets. Yeah, no regrets is avipattisari in the Pali language. Pattisari is regret. So having no regrets means you feel good about yourself. What does it mean to have a regret? A regret can manifest in many ways. Either you can beat yourself up, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm terrible, why did I do these things? That is like really stupid regret. Please never beat yourself up. Yeah, that's kind of really, if you can avoid it. Some people are conditioned to beating themselves up. Please try to decondition that, because everyone who is here is a good person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. So congratulate yourself for taking yourself on this retreat. So regret manifests in this way, that you are kind of upset with yourself, but regret also manifests in the sense that your mind is not bright. If you have done something bad, your mind feels like it is burdened by something. Yeah, it is like a little bit heavy. It is not really bright. It's like it's a little bit gray, a little bit of darkness in your mind. Yeah, this is often what regret feels like. If you have no regrets at all, the mind is naturally bright and happy. This is how you know the mind has no regrets. And you can kind of tell, in a sense, how pure your sila is, but how bright your mind is. So if your mind is not bright, it means that maybe your sila is not powerful enough. And then you have to ask yourself, what am I not doing right? And you have to be really honest with yourself to uncover those treasures in the mind that will then allow you to move forward. But when your sila becomes very established, including the positive sila, all the things I talked about before, you will have no regret. When you have no regrets, the mind will be bright, and when the mind is bright, you will have the pamoja, which is the next factor, the joy. You will feel a natural gladness about yourself. You will feel, yay, I am living well. Yeah, I'm living a good life. And you just feel good about yourself. It's not a kind of ego thing. It's just a quiet sense of happiness about how you live your life. And this is a very beautiful feeling within that every one of us really deserves. Yeah, we deserve to develop that because we're already trying so hard to live a good life. And then now is really where the meditation begins. Yeah, once you have that pamoja in daily life because you feel good about yourself, you will not always have it, but you will have it sometimes because the mind always goes a bit up and down. But then when you have that in ordinary life or in daily life, then you can come to your meditation. And your meditation begins. And then as you watch the breath, etc., then the sequence happens. Based on that pamoja, the sequence happens. You feel glad, you feel joy about yourself, you deepen that joy, and as you deepen that joy, the piti starts to arise. We already talked about the piti in the Anapanasati sutta, and here it is the same kind of piti we see again. Yeah, this is coming from a different angle. In the Anapanasati sutta, you see the breath calming down, becoming peaceful, then you have the piti. Here it comes more straight out of the fact that you remember your sila, and because you do the sila nusati, you feel good about yourself, you have no regret, you have the pamoja, and the piti comes from that. But it's the same basic idea that happens. And then from that piti comes the tranquility. The tranquility when the piti starts to die down. The same thing we saw in the Anapanasati sutta, where the piti dies down and you tranquilize the chitta sankhara, the mental activities. Yeah, things are becoming very peaceful. Here it talks about the kaya pasadi. And what does kaya pasadi mean? It's a very interesting term, this word kaya. Kaya is very often translated into English as body, and body is not a very good translation into English because kaya means much more than body. Kaya in the Pali often is the kind of an embodied experience. It is all the factors of body and mind except for consciousness itself. So for example, if you go to dependent origination, you have on the one hand, you have vijnana, on the other hand, you have namarupa. Vijnana pacha namarupa, namarupa pacha vijnana. And the namarupa is called the namakaya and the rupakaya. And that is what kaya is. It is those two things. Yeah, so it is like all the mental processes apart from vijnana itself. And so when we here talk about kaya pasadi, we're not just talking about the physical body, we're talking about the kaya, also the mental kaya as well. And if you look up the commentary, and I just looked up the commentary, that is what I do sometimes in my room. I look at the sutta and think, oh, that is interesting. So I look into the commentary. First of all, I think about it, and I think, what is my opinion? I always have my own opinion first, because once you read the commentary, you're already getting a distorted ideas, right? So you have to be very careful. First you think about it, and then you look at the commentary. And if the commentary agrees with you, okay, great. If the commentary does not agree with you, then you have to think, am I wrong? Or could it be that the commentary is wrong? Usually the commentary is right and you have it wrong, right? And then sometimes, occasionally, maybe the commentary hasn't got it quite right. So this is the way I use the commentaries. You use them in a careful way. And lo and behold, the commentary says that kaya pasadi here means namakaya pasadi, the tranquilizing of the mind. And of course that also includes the body, because if the mind is tranquil, the body is always also tranquil. That kind of makes sense, right? Because you already have a lot of piti, the mind is already becoming prominent. It's a bit strange that it only talks about the body, so it makes sense that it actually has to do with your whole experience. Then, from the kaya pasadi, then you experience happiness. Yeah, you experience the sukha. And here we are talking about the mind. So how does this go again now? Let me have a quick look. So may I feel bliss. Yeah. And so here that is just the experience of bliss in this particular case. Sukha patisangvedi or something like that. Again, it's parallel with the Anapanasati sutta. Yeah, they all kind of go together in this way. And then when you experience that bliss, the person who experiences bliss, their mind attains samadhi. Exactly the same thing we saw in the Anapanasati Sutta. Vimochayang chittang, that is the entry into samadhi, happens after all the bliss that you experience through the mindfulness of breathing. Exactly the same process again. And this is why we should experience bliss. This is why bliss is good. Why? Because bliss is a necessary requirement for awakening. It is not just that bliss is one of the beautiful byproducts of the path. It is wonderful to have a path where there is so much happiness. And this is one of the benefits of practicing the Buddha's teachings. It is not just that. It is not just a benefit. It is a necessary to have bliss. Only a person who has very, very powerful bliss in the mind will be able to attain samadhi. So don't be afraid of the bliss of the mind. The bliss of the mind is necessary. Never think that you're going to get attached to it. The Buddha never says in the suttas you will get attached to the bliss. That is not really the issue. If you do get attached to the bliss, that is a problem to be worked with. It is a problem to be overcome. It does not mean that you should not practice the happiness. That is the wrong conclusion. So be very careful. Be careful that you follow the Buddha and you don't follow some teacher whose word may go against the word of the Buddha. Be very careful where you find inspiration. The Buddha always says, bliss is the path forward. And there is one sutta where the Buddha talks about where you stop making progress. And I think this is the Udesa Vibhanga Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 137. And in that sutta, he talks about the danger of attaching to the happiness. So you go into a jhana, and then it says, after you come out of the jhana state, it says, the mind, sukkang anusari, I think it is, it follows the happiness. And because it follows the happiness, you get stuck because of that. And getting stuck basically means that you don't progress, you can't attain jhanas again. And so getting stuck, the problem is not that you should not practice the happiness. The problem is that if you follow the happiness, if you attach to it, it stops you from attaining the same happiness in the future. So you should not attach to it. Attaching to it is wrong. That does not mean you should not practice it. Practicing it is obviously right, because that is what leads to all of these benefits on the path. So we have to be very careful, because if attaching to things means that it is dangerous, what about if you attach to sila? Is anyone here who is not attached to sila? We are all, hopefully, we are a little bit attached to sila. If you have no attachment to sila, you're going to do many bad things. So attachment to sila is necessary, right? And that does not mean that it is wrong to attach to sila. It is actually one of the requirements for the path to work. So attachment is not wrong in its own right. It is how we deal with the attachment that is important. And that is the same thing when it comes to all the joy and happiness. These are requirements on the Buddhist path. So then we come to the samadhi. And then when we come to the samadhi, then that samadhi leads to the yata bhuta nanadasana. And this is where things get very profound. And I will not dwell too much on the most profound aspects of the path, because for most people it is enough to get to the samadhi already, difficult enough. But what comes then is seeing things according to reality, and that seeing things according to reality means seeing the five khandhas in terms of the tilakkhana. So you see anicca, dukkha and anatta, and you see the five khandhas in that way. And I talked about that quite a bit this morning, so you already have some idea what that means. And when you see the five khandhas in that way, you get nibbida. And this word nibbida is very interesting, because what it means that you turn away from those things. Because when you see dukkha, you don't want to have anything to do with dukkha, so you turn away from dukkha. It's like the simile in the suttas, it's like a feather. And when you put a feather up against the flame, the feather curls back from the flame. This is how a feather reacts in the presence of a flame. In the same way, you turn away from the dukkha. This is what happens when you see things according to reality. And when you turn away, you have the nibbida. It's like rejection of the 5 khandhas. You reject them because you understand they are dukkha. And then you have viraga. Viraga is the letting go of desire for them. And when you drop the desire for these things, that is where liberation happens. And that is when vimutti nirodhasana happens. You know that you are liberated. Vimuttasming vimuttang itti jnanang hoti. Yeah, when you are liberated, the knowledge of liberation arises. Vimutti nirodhasana is what comes. This is what you find at all the end of the path in all the suttas. So this is this beautiful pathway, how the mind actually operates. From a first-person perspective, how you see your mind develop in this way. And it ends with this beautiful idea of being liberated. Until now, you have been in prison. One day, you can hope to get out of that prison. So now there is a short passage that kind of recapitulates on this. And so I'll just briefly read that out as well, just to see how it is recapitulated. And the Buddha says, and so, mendicants, the knowledge and vision of freedom is the purpose and benefit of nibbida and viraga, of rejection and dispassion. Rejection and dispassion is the purpose and benefit of truly knowing and seeing. Truly knowing and seeing is the purpose and benefit of stillness. Stillness is the purpose and benefit of bliss. Bliss is the purpose and benefit of tranquility. Tranquility is the purpose and benefit of rapture. Rapture is the purpose and benefit of joy. Joy is the purpose and benefit of not having any regrets. Not having any regrets is the purpose and benefit of skillful ethics. And so, mendicants, good qualities flow on and fill up from the one to the other, for going from the near shore to the far shore. The skillful qualities flow on. They flow on from one to the next one. And usually there is another simile that I haven't really included it in the suttas this time, but it's a beautiful, beautiful simile. For those of you who haven't, many of you have probably heard this simile before. I've taught it before here in Sri Lanka, but many of you haven't been on my retreats before. So what is that simile? And this is the simile of the rain on the mountaintop. And this is really just an expansion of what you see here, how good qualities flow one from the next one, all the way to liberation. And the simile of the rain on the mountaintop is the simile when it rains on the mountaintop, when it keeps on raining and raining and raining. Eventually the rain, it forms into little streams. And then if it keeps on raining, those little streams, they merge into larger streams. And if it keeps on raining, those larger streams, they fill up the small lakes. And if it keeps on raining on that mountaintop, those little lakes, they overflow and they flow into the large lakes. And if it keeps on raining on the mountaintop, those large lakes eventually fill up. If it keeps on raining on the mountaintop, the large lakes overflow and they flow into the large rivers, the Ganges, and the enormous rivers of the world. And if it keeps on raining on that mountaintop, eventually the Ganges River itself reaches the ocean. And it fills up the ocean itself. And the ocean here is the simile for the vimutti nirodhasana, is the simile for nibbana, the simile for vidya vimutti that we saw before. This is the end of the path. You have reached the ocean. And there's only one thing that you have to do. And you have to make sure that it keeps on raining on that mountaintop. And if you ensure that the rain on the mountaintop keeps on coming, eventually you will have to go all the way to the ocean and you will achieve nibbana itself. And here, that rain is the sila. Everything else is automatic. So keep that sila as powerful as possibly you can. Keep that rain on the mountaintop. Keep on going and going and going. Remember that the sila also includes right view. So part of that rain is hanging out with the noble ones, hanging out with the Buddha, hanging out with the good people in the world, the real Kalyanamitas, the Sappurisas, the people who really understand what these teachings are about. And of course, the way to hang out with the Buddha is to read the suttas, to take in the Saddhamma, the true teachings of the Buddha, and allow that rain to keep on coming. Remind yourself again and again what it is that you have to do. Motivate yourself to practice the path. Purify your conduct. Understand the urgency. And eventually, you too will reach Nibbana at some point. That is what this path is about. So it's very powerful, and some of these similes of the Buddha, they are so evocative, they are so beautiful, and they really drive home this point that really what we really have to focus on are the simple things on this path. You don't really need to understand all the details of dependent origination. You don't have to understand many of the kind of more subtle things on the path. What you really have to understand is how to purify yourself, how to have a good conduct, how to have the right view, how to understand the urgency of the practice. That is what you really need to understand. For some people, it is useful to understand the broad picture, the large canvas, the understanding how all the things work together. Because when you understand everything, how it works together, then it can kind of make sense. It makes sense why you have to be virtuous, why you have to be kind, because it fits into the large picture. So if you are one of those people, then a little bit of study of the Dhamma to understand everything can be very useful. I am that kind of person. I need to really see the larger picture. And when I understand why I have to be kind, then it's much more easy for me to be kind. I may still slip up sometimes, but it is easier for me to be kind when I understand the big picture. So sometimes that is required. So know yourself, know what you need. But what really matters is this motivation to live the foundations of the path in the right way. So we have a few minutes left. And let me also read out the the next sutta here, because it doesn't really add very much to the previous sutta. It just really recapitulates once more what this other sutta is talking about. So they kind of go nicely together. So this is called the Patama Upanisa Sutta, and it is the sutta straight after the previous one. And Upanisa is here translated by Ajahn Sudato as vital condition. So in other words, an important condition that gives rise to an effect. Mendicants, an unethical person who lacks ethics, has destroyed the vital condition for having no regrets. The vital condition for having no regrets is gone. And so each one of the factors that we have seen are a vital condition for the subsequent factor. That is really important. This is why ethics is so important for making this whole process happen here. When there are regrets, you have destroyed the vital condition for joy, and then destroyed the vital condition for each factor, all the way up to when there is no rejection and dispassion. One who lacks the rejection and dispassion has destroyed the vital condition for knowledge and vision of freedom. And then comes another simile, which again drives home the point of how this works. Suppose there was a tree that lacked branches and foliage. Its shoots, bark, softwood, and hardwood would not grow to fullness. In Buddhism, the hardwood is always the critical thing that we're trying to achieve in the Dhamma. The hardwood of the Dhamma is Nibbana itself. It's arahantship. That is because the hardwood is solid. The hardwood stands there. The hardwood is kind of what does not deteriorate easily. It is the critical, the core thing of what we're trying to achieve on the path. And so if you don't have the foliage, if you don't have the basic kind of outer requirements that make the path work, the outer foliage here are the simple things of the practice, the generosity, the kindness, the sila, the understanding, the right view. If you haven't got those basic things, the hardwood can never really become established properly. So we need the foliage, we need the photosynthesis that feeds the hardwood and makes it strong and powerful. An ethical person who has fulfilled ethics has fulfilled not a vital condition, but the vital condition. So also a slight disagreement with Bhante Sujato. The vital condition for not having regrets. When there are no regrets, one who has no regrets has fulfilled the vital condition for joy. And then you have fulfilled the vital condition for each of the factors, all the way up to the end. And when there is rejection and dispassion, one who has fulfilled rejection and dispassion has fulfilled the vital condition for knowledge and vision of freedom. Suppose there is a tree that is complete with branches and foliage. The branches and foliage are the outer things that feed the hardwood. What feeds the arahantship is all the virtue, all the kindness on the path. Because the branches and foliage are there, the shoots, the bark, each segment on this path gets fulfilled. The softwood, the hardwood, ultimately the hardwood itself grows to fullness and completion. And this is how you attain all the various aspects of this path, including arahantship itself. Okay, everyone, so that is all for now, so please keep on enjoying yourself. And in an hour or so we can continue the Q&A session, so please come back and I'll see you back again at 6 o'clock.